People who work in gun shops, what are some red flags you've seen that made you deny a sale? As they were talking with me about various aspects of the purchase, they would occasionally consult with the person that was with them. There was no person with them. Story 2. I can tell you one time when I almost got denied for purchasing a rifle. It was a bolt action .308 made by Savage. The rifle came with a scope. Not great, but just a little extra over their standard rifle in that package. The store was over an hour away, and so I invited my younger brother to keep me company during the ride. He was 17 or 18 at the time. As I was wrapping up the sale, we had friendly banter back and forth with the salesman. And I was talking about videos of several men pegging pop cans at 1000 M with this gun. And my brother, for whatever stupid reasons I can only attribute to being young and dumb, says, "Yeah, we need to test it on some people." Dumbfounded, I just looked at him and I was just thinking, what the heck, why would you say that? The salesman was understanding and very kindly replied, "You need to be careful with that language. I can refuse this sale to you." I politely apologized and reprimanded my brother for saying something that ridiculous. Story 3. I had one guy who was a resident from another state come in and say that he wanted to buy a CZ-P07. I told him I legally can't sell pistols to out-of-state residents, and he got pissed and stormed off. Maybe 20 minutes later, he comes back with his brother, who was an in-state resident, and as soon as his brother walks up to the counter, he points to the exact same gun and says, "I want to buy that one." He didn't even ask to hold it or look at it first. That's a clear straw purchase. I told them to kick rocks. I'm not going to break the law for you. I had another guy try to buy a shotgun and answered yes to having been convicted of a felony. I asked him if he was actually a felon. You'd be surprised how many guys accidentally checked the wrong box. This idiot looked at me and said, "Yeah, is that a problem, dude?" Yes, it's a problem. Story 4. Gun store I worked at had a varied and diverse clientele. Usually that meant that more law-abiding citizens were looking to purchase firearms, but the usual wacko or two would come by. The one I remember clearest was the guy who came in and wanted to see only two types of firearms, a pistol grip shotgun and a large frame revolver. As I was asking him what he wanted those specific types of firearms for, since they aren't really the greatest for home defense or personal protection, he tells me that he wants a revolver because it won't leave evidence at the scene of a shooting. I noped out of that one and told him we didn't have the type of equipment he was in search of. I passed along his name to the local police, but nothing ever came of it. Story 5. A friend of mine sold guns at a sporting goods store a while ago. He had to deny a guy a gun sale of an R15 because the customer was wearing a bulletproof vest. People don't just walk around with bulletproof vests unless they're looking for trouble. Story 6. I used to work as management in Walmart and as such had to be licensed to do any job in the store, including firearm sales. There had been many cases of background checks not clearing, which is normal. One that I made a judgment call to refuse, however, was the guy who kept joking that he most certainly was not under any circumstances going to use this .22 rifle to hit his wife. You'd get all sorts of rednecks who think they're hilarious while they're gearing up for the next hunting season. But by the third time he brought up not hitting his wife, I just shut down the entire process. Had to have him removed from the building after his breakdown turned verbally aggressive. Story 7. I denied a handful of sales in 2 years. 1. Attempted straw purchase, not malicious. This was usually a wife buying for her husband for a gift but had no idea what to get. It's legal, but a little sketchy. 2. Illegal purchase by out-of-state residents. This happened the most frequently. You can only purchase from an FFL if you are a resident of this state or one that adjoins it. First-time buyers are frequently not aware of this. 3. Stank of substances. Could not have accurately filled out a 4,473. 4. Could not shoulder a weapon. Would have posed a massive danger to himself or others. The people who raise behavioral red flags almost exclusively shop for handguns, which my store didn't sell, or are just looking because they are too poor to afford even a $200 12-go. Story 8. To preface this, an FFL or employee of the FFL should deny a sale if they have reasonable suspicion that the buyer is a prohibited person or attempting to straw purchase. Reasonable meaning evidence-based. Firearms can be sold to citizens and permanent residents, and those with visas under specific circumstances. I never had to deal with IERC. I did deal with the first two groups, straw purchasers. Why they were straw purchasing varied. The four most memorable were probably the cop, the dumb group of kids, the Mexicans, and the offended dudes. The group of kids was 4 young people, 2 male, 2 female, one of whom wanted to purchase a firearm. He eventually settled on an AR-556. Nothing was really unusual up to that point, just the first-time gun buyer questions. Until I watched the other male slip the buyer a couple $100 in cash from one of the female's purses. To clarify, male 2 accepted cash from female 1 and casually gave it to male 1, the buyer. I was so astonished at this occurrence that I bought time, and the store manager reviewed the security camera and confirmed what I saw. Denied AF. Offended dudes. It's legal to buy your wife a gun, but if your wife is standing there and you won't let her, She isn't willing to fill out the paperwork. It's going to get denied because it looks like a straw purchase because she has a record. This applies both ways. If you don't tell me it's a gift, I have no other option than to deny it. If you do tell me it's a gift, I still have to make that judgment call, but it's far harder to have a reasonable suspicion. The cop, by far the most memorable. A woman comes in, very businesslike, and asks to see a .300 blackout. I ask her what she wants to use it for. She answers target practice. I ask her why she's going after .300 blackout for target practice when there are cheaper options available. She responds she wants a .300 blackout. I show her a Ruger American Ranch in .300 blackout. No. I show her an R-pattern rifle with mossy oak camo on it. Closer. She starts texting someone. I show her a deed. She texts some more, takes a picture, texts some more, and says she wants it. D-damn nied. I get a photocopy of her ID, have her fill out the front of the 4,473, sign box 14, and date box 15. I then inform her of the denial, and she leaves immediately. After coming back from lunch, I get stopped by my manager. He tells me that the woman was a cop and that the woman's husband called and expressed how angry his wife was. A few minutes after the husband called, the woman's partner called, and it went something like this. Hi, I'm Officer X with Y City PD. My partner, Officer Z, was denied a firearms sale at your store earlier today, and oh, you thought it was a straw purchase, didn't you? So I don't drive through that city anymore. But it would have been legally indefensible for me to sell her a firearm at that point. I did my job and there was no retaliation. I actually received a good job from my manager. Mexicans are like offended white dudes. It's a general set of behaviors, the first of which is an enthusiasm for Chrome Colt 1911S and .38 Super Auto. Because of the amount of agriculture in the area, we get plenty of migrant workers. Most can't buy guns, but those who hold us citizenships or are permanent residents can. Not being able to properly fill out the 4,473, even when it was in Spanish and being explained to them by a Spanish-speaking employee, would result in a denial. Can't do paperwork. I can't sell you a gun. Mainly this demographic was memorable because it was harder to discern who was buying the firearm as they like to bring their whole family shopping. After 4 of the 7 people present have handled it, who's really the buyer? Couple question 11A, A and I denials. State legal still makes you a prohibited person. Never had to deal with, I'm going to hit people with this, but that would have been an instant denial. Story 9. Oh ho ho. 1. I can answer. This was at my old job. So this man comes in at 9:30, 30 minutes before closing. He has his 2 kids with him and both of them look uncomfortable and won't make eye contact. The man is acting a little strange too, and I feel pretty uneasy about it already, but I chalk all that up to maybe they're just a socially awkward family. So as we're doing the paperwork, the man is telling me about his life and what all is going on in it currently. Then he says he's divorcing his wife and starts complaining about all the things he doesn't like about her. His kids still haven't spoken a word or looked up, but they're so uncomfortable at this point that they're constantly shifting their arms and legs. I pretend to keep filling out the form while listening closely to what the man is saying. He mumbles under his breath, almost where I couldn't hear him. Sometimes I could just kill her. I was an 18-year-old girl, completely alone on that entire half of the store, and I was flipping my absolute crap inside. I pretended not to hear him and kept filling out the form while actually canceling it. Then I said, okay, I'm at the point where I need a manager's approval for the form to go through. 1 second and let me get him and get the gun out of the back room. So I go to the manager's office and I tell my manager, there's a man wanting to buy a gun and I think he's going to kill his wife with it. He says, okay, let me handle it and you stay in here until I come back. By the time he comes back, it's already half an hour past when my shift ended. He said he had to get the police to escort the man out of the store, and I believe he was arrested, but I can't entirely remember since it was a good many years ago. That memory still scares me, because what if I hadn't have heard him? I was the only thing standing between him buying a gun that night to shoot his wife. I still wonder about whatever happened to them. Story 10. Someone being coached by a person they are with or apparently over the phone regarding the firearm or the purchase procedure. Someone lying about being a citizen, border state. Someone who looked wrong. Things like face tattoos and wearing all the same color of clothing from head to foot. While those aren't illegal to do or have, I'm not selling to someone wearing a gangbanger's uniform. Anyone intoxicated, anyone behaving in an odd way, anyone who is apparently angry or in some kind of elevated emotional state, wanting a firearm for a bullcrap reason, say trying to buy a 9mm handgun for hunting, anyone who seems like they will be blatantly unsafe or is immature, think that about covers it. Story 11. Not a gun store owner, but an occasional private seller of my own guns that I've gotten bored of or want to turn into cash for other projects. I listed this AK-type rifle on a public classified site, basically Craigslist, for firearms. Federal and state law says you can conduct a private sale to another individual provided You are residents of the same state. The buyer is over 18, and you are not knowingly selling to a prohibited person or conducting a straw purchase. My state has a huge number of CCW permit holders. So if someone shows you an in-state ID and a permit, that means they're not a prohibited person. Easy peasy. So this dude contacts me, asks his questions, and arrives at a fair offer. I say great, and remind him that as I said in the ad, I will need to see in-state ID and permit. He says, well, I'm from, insert out of state here, and proceeds to start arguing with me about the law. I send him a link to the actual atf.gov page explaining the law. He fires back that he has a class 3 inches, an ex-military whatever the duck, and he owns all these machine guns and suppressors, and that's why the law doesn't apply to him, and I can sell him an AK for cash. Dude even sends me multiple pictures of his supposed collection of machine guns as proof of his class 3, including his 2-stamp suppressed full auto MP5. Yeah, there was an MP5 in the picture, but y'all, 22 LRMP5S with a fake suppressor, clearly visible as such. I was already not going to sell this idiot anything, but I went with my last test for craps and giggles. We can meet at my FFL tomorrow and have him run the transfer. I'll even cover the $20 transfer fee for the inconvenience. It is legal for a person from his state to buy a long gun in my state if it's transferred through a dealer, but, that's a background check. He spouted a bunch more angry bullcrap, called me names, and stormed off. I later sold the AK to a nice man from a local message board who had no problem showing me the requested information and went on to enjoy it happily and responsibly. Ever so often, somebody sketches me out with their replies to an ad, but I just delete them now and wait for someone else. There's always another legit buyer who has no problem showing documentation and behaving himself. I've never needed to sell a gun bad enough to tolerate sketch. Story 12. I used to sell firearms when I was in college. Only a few years ago, though, 2016 to 2018. There were a few times where I denied people that weren't already denied by the next check. Probably the most absurd was a guy asked me, what gun will have the most blowback if somebody comes in my house? I want to see him fly in another room like the movies. That was an auto-deny from me and contacted my manager. Not sure what happened after that. Usually we would call all the other gun stores in the area within an HR half drive and share information. Another one was a younger guy came in and asked, would you recommend this gun for death while filling out paperwork? I denied him as well and reported it to my manager like the one above. The majority of people that will be denied already know they can't own guns, don't both. This kind of surprised me when I started. I thought denies would have been way more frequent. Story 13. Denying a sale is a normal part of this job. In fact, it is a legal obligation of working behind a gun counter. I've been behind counters now for a little over 2 years and have had to deny a number of sales. But this one is my favorite. Long story though. Younger dude comes up to the counter wanting to buy a .45 LC revolver. My coworker begins explaining that we really don't have any right now and walks him down to where the revolvers are. The dude spots the Heritage Rough Riders, which are a .22 revolver made to replicate the old Colt Single Action Army, and exclaims about how that's exactly what he's looking for. My coworker attempts to explain these are different calibers, and vastly different calibers at that, but he doesn't care. He wants it. We say okay, and go ahead with starting paperwork. My coworker pulls me aside, and the guy has an expired license, but it's expired by like years. I go to the guy while he's filling out the transfer form that he must have given me an old ID. He pulls out a piece of paper and hands it to me, saying that this will take care of it. It's a court order, basically saying he was pulled over and ticketed for having an expired license, but if he got a new one soon, they would drop the ticket. This is clearly not acceptable. While I'm reading this, he tells me he finished the form. He goes over to pick out ammunition. I look through his form, and it's all kinds of ducked up. All of the preliminary questions are wrong. Yes, I'm a felon. Yes, I'm addicted to substances. Yes, I'm a wanted fugitive, etc. I kind of giggle at this and show my coworker, who also laughs and pulls the guy aside. My coworker explains that he understands the guy probably wasn't paying attention to the form and isn't actually an addict on the run, but that we have to stop the sale because any incorrect answers require we deny the sale. At first he was cool and asked if he could just do it again anyways. No, he says okay and kind of meanders about, then comes back to counter and asks again. No, he starts getting angry. He starts yelling about how this is bullcrap and he wasn't even paying attention. We don't care. He starts kicking at the counter and throwing crap around about how this is total bullcrap and we're denying his Second Amendment rights. Pro tip, no, we aren't. My manager gets involved and threatens to call the police. Call the damn cops, I don't give a duck, is what he said verbatim. He sulked in the corner for a bit, but after a minute or two, I think he realized cops were actually coming. He tried to sneak out of the store, but cops grabbed him. We explained the story. They disregarded the whole license issue and told the guy to get the duck out. He went to his car with a comment along the lines of, "Ever since I got out of the psychiatric ward, things have been crap." He then went to his car and gave everyone the stink eye for a minute before he broke down bawling and starting bashing and kicking in his car randomly. hitting his steering wheel and everything before eventually starting the car and leaving. Kind of think he wanted to hit himself or someone else. I'm just glad we all stuck to our crap and denied him. Crazy. Story 14. Aside from the many obvious straw sales at my store and several attempts to make purchases with a credit card under the wrong name, and many people who were obviously high or drunk, I almost got through the sale with one guy who wanted to buy a handgun. He was a little jittery and weird, but not quite enough to refuse a sale. But then he started talking about the possibility of the coming apocalypse and the inevitable war. Our store was not going to provide him with a firearm. He actually left without any argument. Story 15. A friend of mine owns a pawn shop and people try to sell him guns all the time. He refused under the basis, I don't know the laws, I'm not dealing with that. Story 16. One time, the buyer brought in his 10-year-old son with him during our Glock sale day. He was being very discreet around his son about buying a gun. He asked me to see a Glock. I released the mag and cleared the G17 and handed him the gun. He holds it with both hands, viewing the side while pointing in his son's direction, and click. I told him you just pulled the trigger and your son is standing there. He said yes, but the gun wasn't loaded. I countered by taking the gun back and refusing to sell him a gun unless he took a crash course with our shop instructor. He agreed as long as it would be quick enough where his son wouldn't notice. We asked him to leave and gained a negative Yelp review out of it too. Story 17. I've overheard a coworker working the firearms department be asked, I need to see if it fits in this backpack first. A school backpack. Cue me standing behind him and waving at my coworker silently with that. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Wave you do with your hands kind of crossing, shaking my head, mouthing no, damn no. He didn't get sold anything, and the store owner alerted the ATF and FBI after we briefed him on what happened. No idea what happened to him, but CCW or not, he wasn't getting a gun from us. Story 18. A guy asked me, hey, could this shoot through wood? To which I responded, depends on what type. Are you thinking of going hunting or something? I asked this because I assumed he was talking about like branches from a tree. He then said, no, I mean like a door. This confused me, but I carried on to ask him if he needed it specifically for a door or just the type of wood from it. Then he says the thing that scared me, no, I need it for a door like in a house. Story 19. People asking for manufacturing dimensions is shady, as duck will usually lead to no response if online and being asked to leave if in store. Usual denials are kids, 18-year-olds, who treat them like toys and brush everything. Generally shady people, yes, we can discriminate based on looks, dialects, and are encouraged to by federal law, and people who are obviously want to end or doing a straw purchase for a family member or so. Gangbangers and hitmen never come in, if that's what you're asking. Real gun shops are nothing like GTA depicts them. There's a lot of paperwork and behind-the-scenes action done by the state and ATF you don't see. Only idiots who don't know the law come in and get denied. Any hardened criminals get theirs through illegal methods. Story 20. I worked in a gun store in a small town in Texas for 3 years. No red flags in that time, at least right as customers walked in. Most people who were buying guns were hunters, and they all checked out pretty normal. However, every once in a while, we would have some fun. This is that story. You all know how underage people will try to buy alcohol, get denied the sale, and get all pissed about it. So then they go out to the car, and the friend you saw them with tries to buy the exact same thing, and they think they're so clever? Exactly that. Sometimes we would have someone who tried to buy a gun, pretty much always a handgun, and get denied. They would then try to get their buddy to buy it. We have to deny the sale at that point. People get really pissed when they are denied a gun sale. They go on about their constitutional rights and how they are being discriminated against. Small Texas town, they were usually white. And anything they could try. We aren't the ones denying the sale. The Firearms Administration is, call them and they will tell you why, dude. Man, I miss that job so much sometimes. Story 21. Obligatory not a gun shop employee. I walked into a gun store in Australia after going to the range next door. Some tard asked to see a, I think, Mark the Ruger 22. Long story short, he looked down the barrel. Story 22. Not an employee, but a customer. I had decided to join the trap team at my high school along with my friends. I was only 15 or 16 at the time, so my mother came along to actually buy the shotgun for me. We go in, look around, consult the employee, and decide on a Benelli Supernova. Fantastic all-purpose gun if anyone is looking. My mom fills out the 2A, passes the background check, and is about to pay when the employee, who's been helping us the entire time, says, "Sorry, I can't sell you this gun. Buying it for your son would be considered a straw purchase, which is illegal." After we argue back and forth a little bit, the owner of this small mom-and-pop shop comes out and asks what the trouble is. The employee tells him the situation, at which point the owner informs in a scolding type, or manner that it's perfectly legal for a parent to purchase a gun for their children as long as they live in the same house. The employee, slightly embarrassed, finishes up our purchase and we got the gun. I don't blame the employee. In fact, I admire him trying to do the right thing, but I was a little frustrated with the confusion and delay. I still frequent that store and have had no further problems. Definitely one of my favorite gun shops is the employees are very knowledgeable and friendly and have a big husky that's always a treat to pet. Story 23. I don't work in gun stores, but I spend a lot of time in them and ranges. I've seen a guy looking homeless asking to see axe and making machine gun noises and mimicking recoil like a 5-year-old. Salesman told me. Yeah, he comes in every week. Don't worry, we will never sell to him. This one story stands out. I had come in early to be the first customer because the store gets absolutely slammed on the weekend. A nervous-looking older gentleman is also outside waiting. I can tell something is off about him. I enter and start talking to the salesman, and the other guy is hovering. My curiosity is piqued. The salesman starts talking to him, and I can only make out certain parts. Yes, we know. It's been passed down to everyone. You don't need to worry, sir. He will not purchase one from here. And then I figured it out. This poor father was trying to keep his son from buying a firearm because he wants to end his life. He looked like he was ready to break down in tears. The salesmen all understood the issue and were very kind. As a father, I just wanted to hug or pat on the shoulder and tell him he was doing the right thing. He left the store to go to another firearms store. His eyes were watery. This man loved his son and was about to go to every place around and ask them not to sell to his son. It hit my black heart in the little feels it has. Story 24. Almost. Didn't have to actually deny the sale, though. Would have if I got the opportunity, but it didn't get that far. Him, I need a gun me. What kind him? Shoddy. Me, they're on the rack over there. 5 minutes later, him. Sets gun on counter, displays wad of cash. Hands me $400. Here, me. Actually, we need you to do a background check first. Him. What's a background check? Me. Basically, we check for any felonies or other things that would prevent you from owning a gun. Him. Immediately leaves. Story 25. I don't work in a gun shop. This was a private sale. I had a really cool Walther PPKS and 380 ACP. For those of you who don't know, this is the James Bond gun. Neat pistol, but it had sharp edges that hurt me every time I tried to take it apart, and was a really snappy shooter that was Kaya ID of uncomfortable. After a while, the cool factor of owning the James Bond gun would not outweigh the regular pain, so I posted it for sale on an online classifieds ad. After a few days, I get an interested buyer. We agree on price and plan to meet up. I arrive at the destination and am met by this kid. We introduce ourselves, and I look at him and say, "Listen, I'm going to need to see ID before selling this." Kid is cool with and hands his driver's license to me. Crap. He is 19. I apologize and tell him that he is not 21, the legal age to own a handgun in my state, and I'm not willing to sell to him. He goes, "What? Really? Come on. I've bought lots of guns like this, and no one has ever asked about my age or cared." I responded, "Yeah, sorry, I'm not them. I'm not selling this to you." At that point, I got in my car and left. Story 26. If someone comes in reeking of substances, if someone looks or is behaving as if they are on substances, if someone has gang tattoos visible on their face or hands, etc., if someone seems extremely depressed, all good reasons to deny sale. Story 27. I was refused a sale once on a .22 rifle because my CCDW license address and my driver's license address didn't match, despite the matching photos, names, and multiple other photo IDs with all the correct info on them. Funny enough, my wife was with me, and they let her buy it no problem. It was my first apartment during college, and my driver's license still had my back home address. Story 28. A few years back, I had a guy come in looking for a semi-automatic pistol. He knew exactly what he wanted, and after holding it, he confirmed that was the one he wanted to purchase. I handed him some paperwork to fill out, and instead of taking the pen, he snapped his fingers, and this lady came from one of the aisles to fill out the paperwork. This was obviously fishy. So before I denied the sale, I asked for his ID to make a photocopy. I then proceeded to tell him that I couldn't continue with the transaction because it was obvious he was trying to do a straw purchase. And he told me that he could do whatever he wanted and that I had to sell him the gun. A little more back and forth continued, and I eventually told him if he doesn't leave, I was calling the police. He left, and I sent his info to a local ATF agent. And not 20 minutes later, I got a call asking for all the info I had on him, when he arrived, when he left, and what direction he went. Turns out the guy was wanted for being a suspect for several murders, and they couldn't track him down, hence why he wanted someone else to buy the gun. Story 29. Had a guy get upset with me when I worked a short stint at a Walmart in sporting goods where we sold rifles and shotguns. He was filling out the standard ATF form we needed and got to the part where they ask about past criminal convictions. He checked yes. Our rule was we absolutely cannot sell to someone if they check that box, since it could be a liability against the store if they used it in a crime. I explained it to him, and the first thing he said after a brief pause was, "Well, can I get another form and just check no?" Nope, that's not how it works. If you have past criminal history, it will come up anyways when we call your name in to validate the ATF forms. I went to take his form to file it in the do not sell part of our filing. He grabbed it, crunched it up, and pocketed it, saying he'd go to another store and fill out the form there. I wished him luck and explained yet again that he'd still get denied, but this time he'd be outed for lying on the form and likely get into worse trouble. He didn't care and stormed off in a huff. Thankfully, I never saw or heard from him again after that. Sometimes I just don't understand people's thought processes. Story 30. My boss was finishing the background check and decided to let the customer and his friend test fire in the range while they wait. They pass the check, but as he goes in to tell them, he overhears them saying things like, "Yeah, he's going to get what's coming to him, and just wait, he's passed the next time I see him." Boss pretended the check didn't fail, but that the problem is on the checker's end. They'll have to come back tomorrow. As soon as they leave, boss called the cops and every other dealer in town to warn them. Cops picked the two guys up later that day. Story 31. I've wanted to deny sales back years ago when I worked at one, but my boss was a sleazeball and wouldn't let me. Biggest time I wanted to deny? Guy came in, wanted like 12 Phoenix Arms pot metal $75 little .25 ACP pistols. It was obvious he was going to resell. He also bought a Tech 9 and a KG99. I took my boss aside and was like, "You're not really going to allow this, are you? It's pretty obvious he's going to resell or something. Something definitely illegal is going to happen." His response, "Psh, you don't know that. There's nothing illegal about buying that many guns." I knew that, but it's still suspect as hell, especially cheap little pocket pistols. I guess the redeeming thing is even since he passed his background check, he bought more than one pistol in X amount of time. Right then and there. So a special form is filled out to be sent to the ATF to check him out as a way to help stop illegal underworld dealers, etc. So I don't doubt an ATF field agent showed up at his place and asked a ton of questions. Story 32. Not a buy, but an attempt to sell a gun. I spent lots of time at gun shops and shows. Once at a gun show, a dealer who was a friend told us to watch the action toward the front. A young man had come to his table looking to sell a gun. This was a pricey, high-end pistol, and the guy was looking for just $200 out of it. For reference, it was worth more like $2,000. Dealer probes a little about how the young man had obtained this gun, but got lots of vague "I bought it last year" sorts of answers. Dealer says he cannot afford it, and as soon as the young man walks away, he flags over one of the police officers at the show. We watched as the police verified the gun was stolen and were arresting the young man. Story 33. I once had to deny a sale to this dude who wanted a Barrett 50 caliber rifle because he needed some long-range hunting. I thought nothing of it until he started calling his friend telling him he got the rifle and was on his way to the mall. Story 34. I've refused because they were obviously high. I've refused because they tried to offer me their medical substances card as a form of secondary ID. It's a federal form, and it's still federally illegal get. I've refused because it was clearly a straw purchase. Amazing how this guy came in, wanting the exact rifle that another guy was refused for not 2 hours ago. Didn't want to hold it, didn't want to know anything about it. Just came in, looked, and said he wanted to buy that gun right there. Story 35. My father sold some guns once. A 18-something kid came to him asking to purchase an R-15. He acted all sly about trying to get one without any background checks. As it turned out, he was a college student writing a paper on gun abuse. And when he realized that he was not going to get a gun without ID, a background check, and a long waiting period, he was confused. And, to top it all off, this was a gun show. Story 36. Not my story, but a friend of mine used to work at a gun shop. The one time he denied someone was because he asked the customer if he was looking for anything in particular. The guy responded by saying he was looking for something that would do a lot of damage. Story 37. My brother owns a small gun shop. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but he gets a disturbing amount of people who think that buying a gun grants them some police powers. As in, okay, I'm going to buy this gun and then head downtown so I can chase off those homeless guys by the Starbucks. As my brother put it when the whole Trayvon Martin thing went down, I never met George Zimmerman, but I've had at least 30 of them come through my store. Story 38. I'm in Sweden, and when I moved to a new part of the town where I live, I found a gun shop for the first time. I've walked by it a dozen times and still haven't gone in. I'm a permanent resident, but not a citizen. I'm just wondering how many hoops I'd have to jump through to get anything. Most people going in there are hunters, and I'd just be a young, white, female immigrant, too curious for her own good. Story 39. Back in the 70s, had an Asian bloke come looking to make a bulk order. Mostly assault rifles. Seemed shady just because of the amount. But the real red flag was that he was carrying a big red flag with a star in the middle. Turned out he was a North Vietnamese soldier and he'd got on the wrong bus. Story 40. Worked at Walmart part-time for $8 doing gun sales. Understaffed and gun sales took forever. So sometimes I'd just reject people I didn't like the look of for paperwork errors and tell them to come back the day I didn't work to retry again. Story 41. Not a gun store employee, but I sold a gun online once. One guy was interested, and I asked him to meet me in front of the local police department. He asked to meet somewhere else, so I told him to duck off. Gun shop, employees have read it. What are some red flags that have caused you to deny a sale of a firearm? I worked at Kmart in the sporting goods department in the early 90s. There was an incident locally where a guy bought a shotgun from Walmart and shot up a nursing home where his ex-wife worked. So one night, I'm stocking ammo when a woman approached me about buying a 12-gauge shotgun for her 10-year-old son. She asked a lot of questions, and I asked about her son and convinced her to start him off with a .22. She settled on a 10, 22, and I started her on her 4,473 when I noticed that she had placed her large purse on the counter. The bag was huge and looked like the ends were mesh. As I moved around, I noticed she would nudge the bag to aim it towards me. A chill went down my spine as I realized that I was being recorded. Looking at her driver's license, I recognized her name from the local CBS affiliate. I was selling a gun to an undercover reporter. Great. Suddenly, I'm in CYA mode, so I whip out the yellow pages and find hunter safety instructors and tell her that she should take her son to get proper training and give her several numbers to call. I hand her a hunting regulation book and grab a better trigger lock and suggest that she buy it. I don't remember grabbing them, but suddenly a cleaning kit, ears, and glasses are in my hand. I'm freaking out inside. I check her form and call my manager for him to approve the sale. I'm trying to let him know who she is while he is cracking jokes and commenting on the vast pile of safety equipment that she is buying. After ringing up the sale, she thanks me for the help and leaves. I tell the manager who she was, and he goes white as a ghost. Calls the store manager, who calls corporate, and everyone is freaking out. They pay me to sit around until the 10 o'clock news comes on, and sure enough, it leads with, "After the shooting in place, we wanted to see how easy it is to buy the same gun that was used in the killings." It turns out that she had made a purchase at Walmart prior to coming to my store. As they played the footage from both purchases, an expert picked apart the Walmart Associates sale and pointed out a bunch of mistakes he made. The expert then turned to my sale and commended just about everything I did, including talking her into a smaller caliber for a youngster and suggesting safety instructors. He rated me an A and the Walmart employee a D, maybe D-. I was relieved. Corporate was so relieved that I got a $500 gift card and 2 paid days off. Aside from the occasional 2 a.m. customer trying to buy a gun while drunk, no sales after 9, sorry, that was the one that sticks out as flag-inducing. 2 years there, and for the most part, gun people were the best to deal with. Edit for those across the pond, supermarts are superstores. The one I worked in was nearly 24,000 square meters. It is a full-size department store and a giant full-size supermarket. Fresh bakery, butcher shop, pharmacy, video rental shop, bank, barber, etc. You could very conceivably do all of your shopping in one store and pay at one register. Open 24 hours, so no matter what shift you work, you can get your shopping in, unless you want a gun or a fishing hunting license. 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. We have a lot of room here in the States, and we try to fill it up. Story 2. I have an FFL and have worked many gun shows as well as a couple of small stores. Both before I had my FFL and after, 99% of the time, the biggest red flag is body language, how the person acts, and how they carry themselves. It is easy to spot many heavy substances users. I was working at a small gun shop and had a young guy, maybe 22 or 23, asking about a pistol. Something felt off, but nothing that immediately set off a red flag. He asked to see a Kel-Tec 9mm, and when I handed him the pistol, he immediately pointed it at me and pulled the trigger. When it went click, he said, "Too bad it was not loaded." Not only did I not sell to him, the person behind him was an off-duty cop. I learned that when a customer does that, it is still considered assault with a deadly weapon. Story 3. There was a guy that came into the shop I worked, and after filling out the paperwork, my coworker started rattling off some questions. "Are you buying this for yourself?" etc. One of the questions asked if the purchaser is a fugitive from the law, and the guy says yes. So my coworker repeats the question, and he says yes again. My coworker says, "So you're a fugitive?" And he goes, "Yeah, why do you think I'm buying the gun?" Coworker says, "You know I can't sell you this, right?" And he goes, "Oh, well then can I leave?" Before anyone could say anything else, an off-duty cop pulled out some cuffs and goes, "No, you cannot. I've turned away people for substances, alcohol, just being kind of a weird guy." On Christmas Eve, while running the range portion of our facility, a guy came up and asked to rent a rifle and asked if he could purchase a single bullet because he didn't need the others. Turned him away for that. Story 4. I work at Field & Stream and have sold firearms for a collective 2 years now. I had one guy who came in all strung out. He was looking for a pistol-gripped shotgun to take care of some business. I took it upon myself to see what this business was. He then tells me that he has to take care of his girlfriend's husband because he owed him substances money. All he offered for ID was a TWIC card. That was an easy turn down, but he didn't end up being too happy about it. Another guy I had come in on Black Friday wanting to buy a Ruger for his wife. Well, nothing illegal there because if you're under the same household, then it isn't technically a straw sale. Anyways, the guy wanted the LCP and handed me a Florida driver's license. I'm in Alabama, so I can't transfer a handgun across state lines. 2 hours later, a male walked in and said that he was told by his friend that you can't transfer handguns across state lines, so he wanted to purchase it himself. Well, that's not the wife he said he was buying for. nor was it anyone related to him. Insta straw sale and shut him down. The previous guy came in and started screaming at me. They left with our security guy pushing them out. Story 5. I worked at a larger sporting goods store, so when I came in for my shift, I had to finish this old guy's paperwork. He starts telling me about the gun and how he can't wait to shoot it. So I look at the paperwork, and a woman applied to buy the gun. Big red flag, and he told me that his wife was filling out the paperwork. He told me it doesn't matter who signs for the paperwork. Huge red flag. So I talked to my manager about canceling the sale. Then the guy stormed off super pissed, but they said he'll probably do it again at another store. Story 6. Instructor for a hole-in-the-wall joint here. Saw a dude's probation officer's business card in his wallet. Had a possibly homeless woman ask for a little gun. Not like to hit anybody, but just to teach them a lesson. Story 7. Used to work at a gun store in California. Had this guy come and attempt to buy an R. On the ATF form 4473, there's a question asking something like, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor of DV? Person marked yes to this question. So I'm really put off because it's pretty obvious that column of questions must all be answered no. So I asked him if he marked that on accident, and he told me no, that he had in fact been convicted of DV. Told him sorry, I couldn't sell him the gun and to have a good day. Comes back a week later with his wife, points to the same R on the shelf and says that's the one he wants. His wife comes up and says she'd like to buy that R. My coworkers and I witnessed the whole thing, and they knew about my experience the week before. So we told them that was illegal and said we couldn't sell either of them a gun. The wife refused to take our declination and got mad that we wouldn't sell it to her. We made it crystal clear to her that if she bought that gun for him after openly admitting it to us that it was for him, she would be committing a felony. She did not care and wanted to proceed. We told them to leave or we would call the police and have them deal with it. They left. Story 8. Guy came in looking to buy a handgun. His girlfriend decided to wait in the car while he did the paperwork. Since he didn't have a carry permit, so he couldn't pick up the same day, Florida law, and as soon as he left and got in the car, his girlfriend starts yelling at him and slaps him because she apparently didn't think he was actually buying. The next day, my boss called him and told him that he wasn't going to sell to someone in his situation, and the guy thankfully agreed. Another time, a woman came in and told us not to allow her brother to get a carry permit and provided us his name and her contact information. Edit. Just remembered another one. We list stuff on Gunbroker, an auction site, and a guy who was living within driving distance won a .38 Smith & Wesson revolver from us. I wasn't there when the guy came in, but apparently the guy had forgotten. His ID when he first showed up sounded suspicious since he had to travel about 45 minutes to get to us and had to come back another day. Next time he shows up, he still has nothing proving he's a Florida resident and claims he's a merchant marine, like that somehow makes it better. Needless to say, he got an F on his Gunbroker reputation and no .38. Story 9. Guy comes in, wants to get his first gun. Talk to him about rifles, shotguns, and handguns, but is certain he wants a pistol. Spend about an hour showing, talking, explaining. By the end, he has come to the decision of a Glock 19. Not the most expensive gun, not the cheapest either. Start paperwork, but his address doesn't match his license. Form states that it must be a valid government-issued ID with a valid address. Tell him he has to get licensed changed. Well, the online deal says he needs a new photo. Goes to DPS, gets address change and photo, and comes back like 3 days later. Finish background check and start talking about ammo. Decides he wants a box of self-defense and 2 boxes of range ammo. Got to the money part and was short $20. Went to the bank to get some more cash. Finished the transaction, left, and seemed excited to go shoot. Next day we get a call to let us know that night he had killed himself. Went through all that time, all the effort, could have bought less ammo or a cheaper gun. Just goes to show that sometimes there are no red flags to see. On an actual red flag story, we had a guy come in who seemed drunk. No smell of alcohol on his breath, but slurred words with a bit of off-balanced. Wanted a shotgun for home protection. Was just him. His wife divorced him recently. So just him, alone. Is it a felony to bounce a check? We got 3 big red flags for a strikeout. He passed the background check, but at any time we can choose to not sell anyone anything if we feel the need to. Told him we were denied, and it was probably in his best interest. Gave his check back after he asked if we would write him a new one. So partial concern for the guy's well-being, partial scam attempt. Story 10. When I first got out of high school, I worked in a pawn shop as the guitar and drums guy. I was there to do music and stereo sales and clean up, but every now and then I would have to work the gun counter. I grew up around guns, know the difference between a shotgun and a rifle, got the NRA gun safety certification when I was a kid, all that. I was a lot happier slinging guitars, though. The gun department had 3 kinds of regular customers: off-duty soldiers, military town, weird old collector dudes, and bikers. I would later find out the bikers were running stolen guns through our shop, and the regular gun guy was playing fast and loose with the ATF forms. But that's another story for a different day. Story 11. Turned away a few sales. Mostly people who reeked of substances or would ask for clarification on the substances question by saying, "Does it count if I have a prescription, though?" One time, I was beginning my shift and a fairly attractive young woman came in. Naturally, in the firearms industry, we didn't get too many women coming in, let alone any that looked attractive. Needless to say, she got plenty of customer service. Eventually, she starts talking with one of the younger associates about buying a .22 caliber rifle. She knew the name but didn't know anything else about it. He directs her to the specific rifle and then begins on the paperwork. Something just seemed off about her. I politely inquired to her about her interest in the gun, what drew her to that particular model, etc. None of her answers seemed very genuine or knowledgeable. It was just a huge red flag for me. The other associate continued processing the paperwork, either out of inexperience or just escorted by this girl's attractiveness. I excused myself from the conversation and went to speak with the manager privately. I told him the situation and put it in his hands. He came over and looked at the girl and mentioned that she looked familiar. After a few moments, he recalled that she and her boyfriend came in a few weeks ago trying to buy that exact same rifle, but was denied through the NICS system. We then approached her and told her that we believed she was buying the gun for another person, and that we would be terminating the sale. We watched as she nervously walked out across our parking lot into the adjacent Walmart lot and got into a vehicle with, you guessed it, the felon boyfriend. They sped off immediately after. We called the other gun stores in the nearby area to alert them about this couple. We found out later they tried the same deal at another store 20 minutes away. Story 12. I used to work at a recently bankrupt big box sporting goods store for over 15 years. Best denial of sale. The grandfather, father, and son all came in separately to try to use the same permit to buy guns. The permits are issued by the police department after a background check for one individual only. On the permit, they left out the SRJR 3 designation, misspelled their surname, and made up a Dob. If your ID has SRJR 3 on it, then the gun permit has to have that too. Also, if you can't spell your own name or remember your birthday, then that is not a good sign. Any one of these things are automatic rejections. Upon denial of the sale, each of them physically threatened me, promised that I was on a list now, and that I should watch my back because of all the cops that they know. Later in the week, we got a call from the police. It turned out that whichever one of them got, the permit deliberately put the wrong information to get by the background check. I am not sure how this got past the police. None of them were able to pass the background check. If I remember correctly, Junior had an active warrant, and we were to call the police if any of them ever came back in the store. Surprise! The other two of you have warrants now. Dumbest denial of sale. A couple came in that had just completed a handgun safety course. They both proudly showed me their paperwork and started looking at guns. They were waiting for a friend who would help them choose what to get, and he was going to take them out shooting the next day. While they waited, they proceeded to lecture another customer and I on various guns that they were looking at. About 75% of the information was wrong. The one wrong thing I remember is that they believed apparently for Glocks, the model number indicates the caliber. This is sort of true, but they believe something like a Glock 17 fires a 17 caliber round, which is 17 mm long. Thus, a Glock 21 fires a 21 caliber round that is 21 mm long, and so on. Then the guy has his wife point a pump shotgun at his face, so he can look down the barrel and try to pull the trigger. The idiot wanted to see the action of the gun to make sure it worked. Neither of them checked to see if the gun was empty. They simply assumed that it was. They got mad when I took the gun away from them, told them I would not sell them a gun, and to get the hell out. Up to this point, the other customer was just amused by the couple. Once they looked down the barrel and pulled the trigger, the other customer that was there started getting them out about being gits. They could not comprehend how dangerous, stupid what they did was, and countered with that gun was clearly broken because it did not go click. The gun was not cocked, and the action was open. Worst denial of sale. A friend had just turned 21 and was flying into town for a long holiday weekend. During his stay, he was looking to pick up about 5 guns while he was in town. So I put aside some guns for him to look because he was supposed to stop by on Friday night after he arrived. Once he arrived on Friday, he and a bunch of our friends decided to go get dinner and some drinks instead of coming by to look at the guns. So he gave me a call to let me know that he would be coming by on Saturday instead. Not a problem. I was opening on Saturday anyway and ended up joining them for drinks later that evening. On Saturday afternoon, he finally rolls into the store looking very hungover. He looks over what I had put aside for him and eventually decides on 4 different guns. I start him on the paperwork and notice an issue with his permit. The police department had screwed up the permit. They put the issue date and expiration date as exactly the same. The permit had expired the exact same day it was issued and had only been good for that day. He could not get any guns and would have to fly back to his hometown to get the permit reissued. But the police department was closed for the holiday weekend. He picked up his permit on Friday before going to the airport. Story 13. White supremacy tattoos, clothing, jewelry, etc., and making thinly veiled threats about traitors. Me, apparently. Stumbling into the store, crap-faced, high, tweaking. admitting to felony assault, but it was so long ago. Admitting to being in court for DV. I haven't been charged yet, my lawyer said I could get one. Or admitting they just crashed their car and fled the scene and needed to get a pistol so the police couldn't get them. And my favorite, guy walked in and wanted to buy 2 FN57s, fairly expensive pistols. He had a valid concealed handgun permit, license, and credit card. He finished his paperwork, paid, and then began telling me how cell phone towers are actually mind control devices that use the nanomachines and fluoride put into the air by chemtrails to create a mind-controlling fog, which also explained it was so foggy during the election. He knew this because he worked for the CIA and Illuminati in the 70s. Story 14. I frequent my friend's gun store where he works, either using their range or buying whatever. It's in a crafty town, so there's been a few issues I've witnessed. You get the usual scruffy tweakers and wannabe gangbangers. One wannabe hard guy came in with a damn entourage of gits. He started asking to see this and that. He crossed the muzzle over my buddy and his boss multiple times as well as customers. They were asked to leave as they were being unsafe and his friends were being loud, cussing, dropping the N-bomb. So clear the retard mantra of responding to things too difficult to understand with threats of abuse. I'm coma back and damn hit you idiots! Throwing up gang signs and crap, they shut the duck up right quick with multiple guns drawn on them. The police came and arrested 2 of them because they had outstanding warrants. Moral of the story. Don't act hard when really you're made of jello. Idiot-flavored jello. Story 15. Once while I was working the gun counter at a Big 5, some guy asked if he could buy just a couple of bullets. I don't need the whole box, just a few. I noped the duck out of that request. Just a few months after that, I quit Big 5 and picked up a gig working the gift bar at Sportsman's Warehouse. It's the area where you can get useless Chinese-made camo-themed tchotchkes and some useful stuff, binoculars, GPS, and more relevantly knives. So I'm working the knife counter and this guy walks up and tells me, I need a knife a bad guy would use. What's more is I can't tell if he is a really rough-looking teenager or a scrawny white guy in his mid-20s with an affinity for dressing like a cholo. No judgment. It's a legitimate lifestyle choice. He also, and this is key, is wearing jewelry made out of cardboard. Legit string and white cardboard colored with crayons. I am fairly determined at this point, I don't want to be involved in any way, in providing a sharp object to this guy. I start asking some questions and the guy explains that he is working on a TV show, and they are filming this part where the bad guy needs to threaten the main character. The director wanted to use a knife as it was more personal and fit with the personality of the bad guy. He assured me the knives would be blunted and used for prop purposes only. The situation makes a lot more sense at this point, and I go about making some suggestions. Sportsman's didn't really carry much in the way of tactical style fixed blades, so I ended up selling him 2 larger Spanish-made hunting knives. I convinced him that a discerning bad guy of wealth and sophistication would appreciate the Paca wood handles and fine finish. And this is how Tuco ended up sniffing Med off an 8-inch Mola Magnum on Season 1, Episode 4 of Breaking Bad. Story 16. I worked at a pawn shop that sold guns. Had a clearly angry man come in one day asking to buy a gun. Okay, sir. What are you looking to get? If we don't have it, I can probably order it. He responded with, I don't care anything. Nope, you aren't getting crap, buddy. He threatened to call the cops. I told him to go ahead and he left. Story 17. Worked at a pawn shop for a few months this past summer. I had a gentleman ask to see a gun. Our policy was to take their ID and give it back when they're done. I asked for his ID and he said he didn't have one. So the manager said to get his car keys, which he had, even though he didn't have a license. Anyways, I give him the gun, and he said that he was surprised by how heavy it was, and that in his home country he could never have held a gun. Then he asked if this gun was used to kill someone, could the police tell what gun was used? I told him yes and immediately took the gun back. I never showed anyone guns after that. Story 18. Finally, something I can answer. I've had several convicted felons try to buy guns from me at gun shows. Don't know why they thought there are no background checks at gun shows. But anyways, one of them was a younger black guy that also had more charges pending. I just told him the background system was running slow today and to walk around and check back in with me in a few. Then I talked to the girl at the state police and she sent it a trooper. She said she couldn't tell me what his charges were, but he was a substances dealer and very stupid one. There was also a guy that worked the gun shows that sold ammo, so he was not an FFL, licensed gun dealer. We weren't allowed to carry inside the building, but he showed me his piece one time and made it clear that he would always be carrying. Then one show, he accidentally shot his gun off in the building and got arrested. In the storefronts I've dealt with, you get all sorts of folks. The most annoying are the, I wish a mother ducker would types that are eager to show off their Taurus 1911 and wish that some Terrys would get froggy. And there's the complete idiots that want a mil-spec stripped lower and swear they can take a Glock through airport security. They're all harmless, though. It's just knowing how to deal with people. Also, the other convicted felon that tried to buy a gun from me was half unexpected. I had an old guy and a young guy come up, and the old guy wanted to buy a gun. Unfortunately, his eyesight wasn't good, so his very thug-looking grandson had to read and help him fill out the paperwork. While this is happening, an undercover state trooper wants me to get the grandson's info, so I do. And it turns out the grandson is clean, and I proceed with the sale. Upon running the old guy, though, turns out he forgot he had a felony. Same state trooper came over and took the guy to jail. People seem to treat gun shows like there's no rules, when actually it's a much more controlled environment than any of the gun shops I've worked at. Story 19. I manage a gun shop. I have a few stories kept short and sweet. I had a man and a woman come in. She picked out a rifle. I had caught the man on camera trying to sneak money into her hand, canceled the sale. Drunk guy came in who had prepaid for a gun over the phone, asked him to fill out the form. He said, "Looks good to me," and hands it back. Obviously drove himself. Had the owner call the police while I stales him by letting him fill out the form. He was so blasted he was incapable of filling out the form. Realized this and left before police arrived. Can't smell of substances. Also people I know who come in to buy a gun and smoke. Since I know, I got to cancel the sale. Guy came in to pick up a layaway firearm and kept asking about warranty of it being stolen and riding around in the vehicle with a loaded bolt-action rifle to have at the ready in case of emergency. Also tried to discuss black market suppressors. We were ringing him up at that time, and he was confused when we told him we owe him $100, which we handed him. He flipped out about how we violated his rights and how he was just going to go buy it elsewhere. A likely illegal immigrant trying to buy a firearm. Signature on the form and his license didn't match. ID seemed fake and had contradicting answers when it came to citizenship. Groups of people checking out pistols. One asks all the questions and wants to buy it. Then someone else steps in to do the paperwork. I card everyone at the point, of course the one asking. All the questions is under 21. Same as the previous, except all are of age, obvious attempt to buy for a prohibited person. I'll post more with edits as I remember them. A previous customer, A of ours, comes in to purchase a pistol with his buddy, B. I smelled substances and made it known to them and couldn't tell who it was coming from. His buddy fessed up and said that he was smoking. I told the both of them it would be best if Guy A came back another day. Mind you, I had not smelled of substances at all in his previous purchases. Next day, A comes back, 0 scent of substances, just like before. I have no reason to believe he smokes as B admitted to it. Buys his gun, leaves. Later that night, B comes back looking to buy the same gun. We told him, since he admitted to smoking, that we cannot sell him a gun. B says that he only said that so A could buy his firearm when A was smoking all along. He got really upset when I told him that he aided in a felony offense, and that neither of them were welcome in the store again. Mind you, we have 6 openly armed people in the room at this point against him. He starts to make excuses, gets loud and angry, a stat slamming his hands in the glass counter. We tell him to leave immediately, so he makes his way to the door, only to rapidly turn around, pound some more glass, and gets louder. The sudden turnaround while out the door hand startled us, and he got the hint when he saw our hands on our pistols ready to draw. Even if the guy did have a firearm, it would have been a losing fight for him. Luckily, he was inquiring about his first firearm. A guy and his wife travel about 45 minutes to get to us and them and inquires about an R we had on the shelf. A few minutes of conversation and questions go by, and he wants to buy it. His wife starts filling out the paperwork. We mentioned to him that it's obvious it's for him, so he must fill out the paperwork. He stated that he left his wallet at home, which the wife vouches for him on. We tell him he's free to buy it if he provides his ID and fills out the paperwork if he goes down to get it. Of course, he goes into a fit about how far he drove, and that neither he or his wife are prohibited. A few hours later, we find him flaming us online while explaining the situations. Everyone collectively told him how shady it looked from a dealer standpoint and that he should just go back with the ID since we gave him the opportunity to do so. Story 20. FFL here. I had a lady come get a Glock 40 inches she had transferred into my shop. It was a HI.380. A quick convo found out it's for her boyfriend who's in the car and can't own a gun because he's a felon. ATF for our city is 2 miles away. I told her I had to check something in the back and called them. They got there really quick. Story 21. I work at a gun range as an RSO for the FWC. And while we don't sell firearms, the only 2 people I've ever had to turn away were 1. Guy wanted to rent a shotgun. So is it okay if I have multiple felonies? 2. Guy wanted to rent a shotgun. Okay, sure, just need an ID. He hands me a women's ID. Sir, this isn't your ID. And, sir, I need your ID on file until you're finished renting. You don't need my ID. Well, then I can't let you rent a shotgun. What? That's stupid. You can't have my ID. I'm not letting you look at it. Okay, storms out. We're pretty confident he either had felonies or was planning to steal the gun with a fake ID. Story 22. I used to work sporting goods at Walmart. Did it for about 5 years. A few I remember. Denied a guy ammo because just before he came to the counter, he and his girlfriend, wife, were yelling at each other a few aisles over and I overheard it. He was still angry when approaching the counter. I told him I overheard them fighting and that he was not in the right state of mind to be purchasing 9mm hollow points. He screamed at me for about 5 minutes until a manager arrived and the manager backed me up. If someone denies a sale, nobody can override it. On the other side of the coin, unfortunately, I sold a Mossberg 520 gauge to a guy. It was March, and here in my state turkey season starts in April. So nothing unusual to be selling a shotgun at that time of the year. He knew exactly what he wanted, knew what shot shells he wanted, said he was gearing up for season, bought a turkey call and a decoy. He was approved by FBI NICS and I completed the sale. Fast forward to about 2 months later, a state trooper came in and asked to speak to me, asked me if the guy seemed out of sorts or anything, which I said no. He then informs me the guy hit his father with the shotgun and he passed. After some time, I realized there's nothing I could have done and that these background checks simply don't do anything. There was no way I could have done anything differently to change the outcome with the scenario that was given to me. Still a shame, though. Story 23, very relevant. At work, we have the gunsmith excuse. This happens when a customer shows up to pick up a gun that I have fixed or customized, and I then overhear the manager telling them that I was incorrect. The gun is not done yet, but it will be done tomorrow. It usually means they're too drunk or high to take a gun home. It's his way of avoiding conflict. We also have to turn away young adults who are retail customers who have so recently smoked that we can get a good contact high off of them. This comes up a few times a month. Story 24. I was helping a friend work a gun show. Friend is an FFL. This guy was walking around the show and he had that aura of shifty. It wasn't any single thing. It was the way he walked, the way he was dressed, just a whole number of things. But still, I told myself not to prejudge. He walked up to our table, saw a gun he liked, and asked about the price. I told him how much it was. Then he asked if we would do a private sale. He was effectively asking us to waive the background check. I simply said, no. That solidified my initial judgment of him, so I told the other guys in the booth about him, in case he came back and tried to talk his way into a sale. The FFL told me that instead of simply saying no, I should have said, why? Are you a felon? Story 25. I don't work at one, but was told a story by an employee of a gun store while my friend was picking up some mags for his AR. Apparently, some kid actually came in to buy a rifle, provided all of his information legitimately, and while the employee called the sheriff's office, he was informed that the potential buyer had a warrant out for robbery. He had to act like he was going through the usual process and keep the guy in the store while a few cops were on their way to arrest him. Criminals are damn stupid. Story 26. I worked at the gun counter at a sports authority about 10 years ago. Basically, if they don't correctly fill the form out, we were told we could not sell them the gun. We also could not tell them how to fill the form out, only to read the instructions carefully. Then we would keep the incorrect form for a week or so in case they came back, and we were supposed to check the incorrect ones with all the new applications. I never did see anyone who looked suspicious in any way try to buy a gun, but if I did, I probably would deny them. Most people would just give the person another form. It wasn't the most followed rule, but I did refuse a couple people on those grounds. If they are too dumb to follow basic instructions, they shouldn't have a firearm. Story 27. Wasn't working at the store at the time, but here goes. 2 individuals came into the store and requested to see the cheapest handguns the store had in stock. The salesperson was showing them the lower-priced handguns, and the customers were picking pistol after pistol based on cost. If it was around $400, they wanted it. The owner was listening to the conversation and was suspicious of these 2 individuals. Eventually, the owner goes into the back to call the ATF after giving the salesperson the signal to slow everything down. The owner called the local ATF field office, and they say they don't have the ability to make it down in time, and asked the owner to call the police to handle it. Owner calls a local detective who frequents the place and informed him of the situation. The detective says, "Slow the sale down. I'll call you when I'm in the parking lot, but allow the sale to go through." The detective calls 5 minutes later and tells them he is in the parking lot with a few marked cars and let the sale complete and exit the business. Once in the parking lot, the officers question them, find a bunch of other new handguns in their car, and arrest them. A few days later, the ATF comes in to get copies of the federal documents they filled out. They tell the owner the 2 individuals were going through the state buying as many pistols as possible with the intent of bringing them to NJ to be put on a shipping container headed for Somalia. The agent said, "The funds used to purchase the firearms are legal, so we can keep it as the guns were evidence now." Story 28. I managed a gun shop for 6 years. A few I remember right offhand, several denials over the years, because the person appeared to be high or intoxicated. One because a guy came in to buy a gun that someone else had tried to buy and been denied by the state. In Tennessee, the background checks are done on the state level rather than directly through the federal system. The second guy came in a couple of hours later and asked if we had a specific make, model, and caliber of a used gun. It seemed suspicious, so I outright asked if he was trying to buy it for his buddy, and he admitted it, but then tried to argue with me that it didn't matter. I explained straw purchase. to him and showed him a pamphlet saying you can go to federal prison, and he decided against trying to purchase the gun. One to a young couple came in one time to buy a gun, and the guy said it was for him. He had a TN ID, but I heard him say they lived in Mrs. I asked, and he said that she lived in Mrs., but he still lived in TN. Then I overheard them talking about when we get home, and then also that they had not been to see their psychiatrist to get their medications refilled. One to a guy who was discussing with his buddy that they had been somewhere else just before coming to my store, and how they didn't know why his buddy had been denied for the same gun. One because the guy was claimed to by buying it as a gift for his roommate. While it's technically legal to purchase a firearm as a gift, many gun stores will want the recipient to fill out the paperwork. When the recipient refused, we denied the sale. One to a guy that stated he had been convicted of a felony but was going to mark no on the form. It should have come up on the background check, but I denied it before it got that far. One to a woman who said she needed a gun to protect herself from witches. She said her neighbors were witches and were casting spells on her. Story 29. I've only refused a few, but I live and work in a rural area where most everybody knows each other and have purchased a firearm before. A couple sales that looked like a straw purchase to me. One college-age guy that reeked of substances are the only ones that come to mind. I've told a few people that I could not work on their firearms because of a lack of time and the volume of work I had, when in actuality, I did not want my name associated in any way with them. Story 30. So I am an international arms dealer. Childhood me still loves saying that, but I just have a FFL and SOT 1. Mainly, I just deal with importing ammunition and specialty weapons. First, I don't have a storefront, I have a warehouse. But the ATF requires you to be put in a database where any Joe Schmo can contact you. Also, Gunbroker refuses to take me off of their site. So people find out about my importer-exporter status and ask if I can help get large amounts of ammo and Glocks into zones. The biggest red flag for me is someone calling, emailing me, and asking for a Glock or Barrett 50 cal. It's Barrett. Most of my customers usually have model numbers, not generic slang terms. I had one git call me up and try to order 3 Barrett 50s with as much ammo as I can get. You want $20,000 in rifles and don't even know a model number? Sure. Come on down. Our friendly neighborhood ATF agent would love to talk with you. Story 31. Oh, another one. There was a couple at the counter checking out 1911S. So what does he need to pick up a gun? He will need a FSC, a driver's license, a second proof of residency. The guy speaks to her in Spanish. This was my red flag. He wouldn't speak to me. He would always talk to his girlfriend and she would translate. I pick up a bit of it and over here, I should buy it today and no green card. So that's all he needs. Yeah, but I don't mean to be out of line. Does he have a green card? No, he just has a driver license. Is that okay? I'm sorry. He needs to be legal in order to buy a gun. They were more understanding than I thought. Story 32. My girlfriend's dad owns a gun store and just told me some guy came in just today to hit his neighbor's cat and all of the kittens. Needless to say, he was kicked out. Story 33. I was at the counter when a gentleman asked to see a Ruger 357. I took it from its case, opened it up, and set it on the counter. The man proceeded to pick it up, looking the gun over. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the man had started loading the gun. Before I had even realized it, I was over the counter. I had managed to get my thumb in the way, so he couldn't close the revolver. Another customer finally caught on to what was going on and helped me wrestle the man to the ground. Needless to say, I didn't sell him a gun. In fact, I quit that day. Story 34. Fortunately, everyone I've sold a gun to has been smart enough, sane enough, and stable enough to be able to purchase it. The only reason I've had to deny anyone is because they failed a background check. Fun bonus story. Cop pawns his pistol and gets denied when he comes to pick it up. I didn't know he was a cop beforehand, but after he got denied, you would not believe the amount of hell he raised. Reason was, he had the same name as someone else that was denied. We convinced him to give us his social so we could put that on the form and clear it all up. He still got delayed though. Story 35. I live in Alabama, where people think guns should be in vending machines, and that paperwork is stupid. I hate having to listen to people make jokes about needing a gun because their wife or friend is getting difficult, and then freaking out on me when I shut the sale down. Common sense should tell you not to joke like that. Just because I sell guns doesn't mean I agree with your views on gun laws. I have my own ass to cover with these sales, and people really don't understand that. When I used to work in a college town, it was a pretty common occasion to shut down sales and call the cops. Because a guy got drunk before his tailgate party, drove to the gun store for a gun, because why the duck not? Got denied and jumped back in his truck drunk as hell. One guy jumped the curb of our sidewalk and almost ran into the building on his way out. Kind of surprised cops didn't start leaving an officer on game day mornings with us. The most common thing I have to shut down is a group of kids, one of which is able to purchase a firearm. All come in together, and the one guy wants to buy like 4 guns. And he's pooling everyone's money together. Smells like they just got done smoking something in the car, trying to hold a straight face when he says they're all for him. They treat guns like children's toys and waste my time. Working there has made me realize how many people are probably carrying guns concealed at any given time in public, and that most of those people have absolutely no respect for the weapon at all. Story 36. When a woman is with her boyfriend, picks a gun without looking at it, and fills out the paperwork, I would grill them every time. I had this foreign couple come in, and the boyfriend was the one checking out an AR-15. We have trigger locks. But then the girl was the one that said she wanted the gun, and I didn't believe her. Anyway, she pulls out a green card, so I just make up an excuse to deny them and then put her info in our system so the other stores knew to be on the lookout. The fun part is when people don't read the form, sign it, making it official, and I get to deny them right on the spot for being an idiot and not answering the questions correctly. Good times. Story 37. For a while, I would go help a friend at his small FFL when he got busy. I was technically a manager there, according to the books. There were times we would refuse to serve someone, but we were able to turn them away at the door because you had to be buzzed in. I never did, because he was the owner and got to make that call. It was a one-man shop most of the time unless I was there. He turned away people who were underage most frequently. His stock was pretty specialized and expensive, so even though an 18-year-old could legally buy a rifle, most were not going to spend $3,000. A few times we turned away people who appeared to be intoxicated. Probably the most sketchy was someone who kept making comments about his ex and the guy she ran off with. My friend gave me the look, and I took the gun off the counter while the guy was looking at the ATF form. He was informed that the sale could not go through today due to safety concerns. He started to get a little irate, but that is right up my alley. I got him calmed down and talked to him a bit about how he wasn't in the right headspace to be getting a gun. We talked about what consequences for hasty decisions and how he would be screwing up his life over a woman. He left without a gun, but with a phone number to a therapist. He seemed okay with it by the time he left. Probably because we were not confrontational and were really trying to help the guy. Story 38. I worked at a sporting goods store in Michigan when I was 18. Often worked behind the gun counter. I actually didn't know a whole lot about all of the different guns we sold. Most of my knowledge and expertise was from GTA. Anywho, one day this guy comes in, late 40s, kind of homely backwoods looking dude. I'm the only one working the counter, and there are two customers who are there before him. First customer has me on the phone processing the FBI background check for purchase. And then when I get to second customer, she's asking a lot of questions. Homely guy is pacing around, looking really irritated. He keeps butting in, saying, "Is my gun ready yet?" He had a gun on order. I'm all like, "Sir, I can't check right now. Please just give me a moment," and apologize to him. We were understaffed this day, and it was around Christmas, so I couldn't exactly call someone over from another department. Anyways, over the course of 10 minutes, the guy gets livid. "I want my damn gun!" he yells. He straight up throws a temper tantrum, knocks some merch off of the counter, and then storms to the front of the store. I can hear him screaming obscenities and displays, merchandise falling to the floor as he stomps to the front of the store. My manager comes back to the gun counter. First thing she says is, "What did you do to that guy?" Needless to say, we canceled his order, which was in. Someone like that doesn't need a gun. Good times. Story 39. A guy was trying to trade me about $2K worth of gun and scope for my $500 AK-47. I was about to do the deal, but my spidey sense was tingling, so I did a quick Google search on the name associated with the email address. Sure enough, it pulls up a Twitter feed of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris pictures and memes. I politely turned down the sale. Story 40. I was in a gun store purchasing a rifle. There was a young man who was a foreigner that walked up to the counter. He claimed he was looking for a rifle to go deer hunting that coming weekend. The salesperson started asking him about where he was hunting, how far of a shot, what caliber he was looking for, etc. The young man could not answer a single hunting question, only that he wanted an AK or R-15. The salesperson asked a few more questions, trying to feel the guy out. He also informed him of the background check process. The young man stated that he was not an American citizen, had no passport, and no ID. The salesman informed the young man he would not be allowed to purchase anything from the store. The young man looked around a little and left. There was no bigotry or xenophobia, just good laws in place to keep guns from people that don't know what they're doing or have malicious intent. This all went down in Waco TX, a place where even our guns have guns. Story 41. I worked at a gun store that was placed in a random shopping center, so we had a lot of people that just came in for fun. I was given permission to turn people away at the door at my discretion, whatever the reason. We got drunk people announcing right as they came in, "Where's the guns for ex-wives?" But mainly I threw out kids that seemed immature and weren't serious about buying a gun anyway. Don't ever pretend to shoot people when holding a gun in a store. Always treat the gun like it's loaded. Ignoring this should get you kicked out. It's amazing we even had to tell people this. I wish I could have thrown people out for stupidity. But thankfully, the handgun safety test, which is ridiculously easy, helped weed out a little bit. Honestly, working in a gun store helped me appreciate guns more. Respect and be thankful for the gun laws, but also weary that they don't prevent the bad guys from buying guns. I had plenty of creeps that I wouldn't want to own a gun that passed everything with flying colors. Still, you can't take my guns away from me unless you pry them from my cold hands. Story 42. A young-looking guy wanted to buy some ammo. When I asked for ID, he told me it was fake. He was not joking. I took his word for it and denied the sale. Story 43. Numerous times, the boyfriend is the one handling the firearm and talking to me about it, and then the girlfriend is the one to purchase it and fill out the 4473, and immediately I cancel the sale right there. I have also terminated a sale for a customer being visually high and reeking of substances. When he got to that question and lied on the 4473 where it asks if you use substances, I asked to see his form, ripped it up, and asked him to please leave the store before the owner, law enforcement officer, comes up front and places them under arrest. We also had an indoor gun range, had being past tense for a reason. I can think of one instance where a customer had their gun taken away for hitting himself in the hand. We didn't take it, the police did. It is a weapon used in an abuse crime now. And we had another customer using tracer rounds when he signed a waiver stating he did not have them. Story 44. I worked at Walmart in 2000 and was placed in sporting goods for some reason. Usually the state background checks came back pretty fast, but sometimes they'd be pending for a long time. This one guy got impatient, so I told him he could leave, and I'd call him back in once it was approved. Wouldn't you know? Almost immediately after he left, I get a call from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations asking if he's still in the store. I say no, and I still remember her response. We have already informed the officer on duty in your store. He has a warrant for his arrest out for a felony amount of bad checks in some state up north. For context, our store had a police officer sitting outside electronics to help curtail theft. She came over and told me what to do. Call the guy and say his application was approved. Then when he came in, call the break room, where she would be with a handful of the bigger guys who worked in the back to make sure he wouldn't bolt. I called. The guy came in. I pointed him out, and he was arrested right there. It was really surreal. Story 45. When I was buying my gun, some guys came in the shop wanting to sell some rifles. The store owner, who I was in a conversation with at the time, walked over to them by the door. They refused to come into the store. They just stood in the doorway. They talked for literally about a minute. I heard one of them say this part was custom, and that was custom. Then they left, and the store owner comes back over and says, "Yeah, those guns were hot. I don't want any of that." I kind of thought the same, just formed their body language. Story 46. I had a guy who didn't know how to spell his middle name or the city he lived in and was born in. Straw purchase attempts were always common. When the guy asking all the questions goes and sits in the car while the other asks to fill out the paperwork is a big red flag. Story 47. They try to buy a High Point. I work for an online dealer and 80% of our returns are for High Points where they failed the background check. Several dealers won't even transfer them through their books. Story 48. I used to work at a large sporting goods, hunting store. I never sold guns, but I facilitated in most of their transactions because I knew the systems well. Biggest thing we would deny would be obvious strawman purchases. The ones where it was a woman buying her first gun, some decked out R that no first-time gun user should buy. Typically with their hubby behind them telling them was to say, those were the easy ones. The best one was a Middle Eastern man who came up to our gun counter, walked right up to the manager and said, "I need a gun," quickly, in a somewhat frantic tone. The manager, this hulk of a man who used to be a charter boat captain, looked at his subordinate and asked, "Bill, does anyone ever need a gun?" To which his subordinate replied, No, they don't." The man lost it, started yelling about how the manager was being an idiot. Cops got called on that guy when he wouldn't leave. Fun day. Story 49. My girlfriend once told a saleswoman she wanted a handgun for when my boyfriend comes here. She then had to quickly explain that we live in different states and she likes going shooting when she visits. Poor lady thought I was abusing my girlfriend. Story 50. I think my favorite was when I had a guy call up asking all these questions about the IDS needed to buy a handgun in VA. Told him he needed 2 IDS. This has since changed to 1 ID. First was his driver's license with current address, and then something else with matching address and name like car registration or concealed carry permit. Says he doesn't have them. So I say, "Bring in a bill or something else recently mailed to you." Says thanks and hangs up. A short while later, a young gentleman comes into the store to buy a handgun. I crap you not. He brought in a felony arrest warrant for distribution of substances. Coworker and I looked at it for a solid 20 seconds, thinking we were being pranked. We tell him we can't sell him the gun because of this. He tells us, "No, it's okay. I got it plead down to a misdemeanor." Still tell him no. "Sorry, I don't care if you can legally pass the background check. You literally just handed me proof you're a substances dealer." He walks out of the store telling us to go duck ourselves. He's headed for the pawn shop down the street and they'll take it as proof. Story 51. This past Monday had a guy and his wife come in and wanted to look at our Rs, but I was with another customer at the time. The man became very angry because I didn't drop what I was doing and help him look at the R he wanted to see and called me racist for not helping him. When I finally got to help them, his wife asked which one he wanted, and he responded, "I don't want it, you do," which I knew instantly it was a straw purchase, very illegal. But at the time, I felt very uncomfortable with the denial in the back of the store and let my manager know to deny it once she walked it to the registers at the front. Store is sports and outdoors, but bigger than a banana's sporting goods. Once we walked them to the front and the manager denied the sale, he lost his damn mind and said he would be back later with his AKs. So we had a cop all night after we closed at the store. Story 52. Went to a gun shop I frequent and have made acquaintances with a couple of the employees. I went in with my uncle, who is from California. We walked in and I showed him a few, and he made some comment about having one of those guns in California. Some background here. He's a California Highway Patrol officer and is subject to much less restrictions regarding firearms in the Republic of Cali. Because of that comment, one of the employees that I didn't know happened to overhear his comment and immediately told the both of us he will not sell us a gun. Now I'm a chill guy and I wasn't there to buy anyway. We were just looking and killing time, and we are both gun nuts. I had heard how apprehensive gun dealers are about dealing with California, but this is the first I've seen it. I have to say I was initially shocked but not surprised. Story 53. I sold guns at a pawn shop. It was about 70% of our business. I never lied to anybody, but I worked with a guy who, after calling the FBI for a proceed, deny, delay background check, would lie to the purchaser if he thought it was a straw purchase or it was a gangbanger he didn't like the looks of and considered a risk. The FBI would tell him proceed with the sale, but he would say something like, "Sorry man, they denied you." Funny thing is, no one he ever denied reacted with surprise. Story 54. Got a guy come in. Wants the crappiest pistol I got. Single action, $169.22 it is. Goes through 3 copies of his 4,473, trying to guess the right answer to, "Are you a damn felon?" I decided after try 1, no sale, but I'm bored. Notice the stab wound in his 7-pound crown tattoo. Damn no. Not happening. He's shaking so bad filling out the paperwork, I can't read his damn dob. Play along. Like, the FBI isn't answering. Come back in an hour. And he does. Blew my mind. Call NCIS for real, get a proceed, ask, delay, huh? And they don't get it. Ask again. They don't care. Proceed. Finally, our CC machine broke down before I had to involve a boss. Story 55. At a shop I worked at, we stopped a, for lack of a better term, deeply depressed woman from buying a handgun. I wasn't actually part of the sale, but I was observing most of it out of the corner of my eye. We were friendly with the local sheriff's office, and someone came over and talked to her and got her in touch with some help. A crazy a-hole, technical term, tried to buy a gun once. He seemed pissed and agitated about how long things were taking, which is the biggest red flag by far. And essentially, I kept him talking about the firearm, and he ended up admitting he just wanted it for a friend. I stopped the sale, and sure enough, it was for someone who couldn't buy a gun. Story 56. In California, if you want to purchase a handgun, you must provide a dealer with 2 forms of documentation that corroborate your address. The most common combination is a K driver's license with a KDMV car registration. Well, some genius didn't have his car registered in his name. It was still registered under his mommy's, so he offered us his KA driver's license alongside his California Medical Substances Growers Cooperative card. Such a get. Story 57. The most common scenario is that 2 people come in together. One of them does all the looking around, handling of the firearms, asking questions, etc. They'll decide what they want, look at their friend and say, "Get this one." The friend will then try and do the background check. Obvious straw sale. Story 58. So not me, but recently a guy walked into a gun store I used to live next to and asked about how he could avoid the background check. They decided they wouldn't sell him anything. Later, shot up the mall 5 mins from my house with a .22, hit multiple mutual friends, and they pass. Had friends present that evacuated. Talked to one of them all the way home because the guy was loose. It could have been worse if the gun shop wouldn't have refused his business. Story 59. Hey, finally a story I can tell. If they are jumpy, jittery, or nervous, if they are completely new to firearms and don't want to listen to me tell them about options. The group of young men that came in for the pistol grip security shotguns looking for combat guns and knew nothing about guns and couldn't tell me what they were going to do. Gun store employees of Reddit, what red flags have caused you to deny a sale? A person comes in with his girlfriend. He does all of the talking and then the girlfriend says, "I want that one." No, honey, he wants that one but can't pass the background check. Story 2. Straw purchases. So many straw purchases. You aren't being clever. I know this isn't for you. Reeks of booze and obviously drunk. No joke had a guy come in to shoot. We have an indoor range attached to the shop, who could barely keep himself standing. After we refused service, he went outside and sat on our front porch for about 10 minutes. He comes back in and says, "I am Special Forces. Part of our training is I have to shoot drunk. I have to. Sure, pal, but you aren't doing it here. Had a lady mid-purchase filling out her form and made the comment that she was going to use it to hit her neighbor's dog. No thanks. I've had several instances of I just didn't feel good about it. Something was just off. There was no one thing they said or did, and almost all the time they passed their background check. But I couldn't shake a feeling that this wasn't a good idea. I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but I always go with my gut and deny a sale. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully. Story 3. Not an employee of one, but I once witnessed a lady in a Bananas Sporting Goods wanting to buy 2.22 cal rifles for her sons to shoot themselves with like airsoft paintball. The look on the gun counter employee's face was absolutely priceless. He obviously wasn't going to sell to her. She got mad and just couldn't wrap her head around that a .22 is a real bullet in a real gun and will hit you. Story 4. Not a store employee, but the story happened in a gun shop. Gramps died and left me his hunting rifles. He was very close with the owner of the local gun shop. They went deer hunting together for something like 30 years. And I've known him for about a decade as well. So I went by and asked if he'd like one as a memory piece. He said yes. So I brought a few of them to the shop and told him to pick one. In comes Random Guy. Random Guy just walks up to the counter, throws some money down, and tries to grab one of the rifles. Random Guy didn't make a purchase that day, or probably ever. Story 5. Girl, usually don't get mad at me, pulls out the description, or even better, the SKU of the firearm on a piece of paper or phone, has no idea what the firearm is or what it does. Story 6. Not a gun store employee, but my brother was red flagged accidentally, but it was an honest mistake. We live in rural Idaho. There's usually no waiting period if the person's background check comes back without any flags. If there is something, then there is a waiting period. I'm with my brother, and he's picking up a new gun at a store in the neighboring town, about 50 miles away. Guy comes back and says my brother will have to come back tomorrow. My brother is kind of pissed, but whatever. He'll come back. We're about halfway home and the shop calls and tells him he can come back. We turn around and go back and the shopkeeper apologizes and explained what happened. My brother has a semi-common name, not like John Smith, but something like Andrew Jones. Anywho, the guy at the shop tells us that a man of the same name in southern Idaho was wanted for hitting his wife. So we had to double check and make sure it wasn't him. Better safe than sorry, I guess. Miss my sister-in-law, though. Story 7. Don't work there, but was in a gun shop to talk to a friend of mine a few months after the Pulse shooting. A couple comes in, states they want an R because that guy had the right idea about them gays. Needless to say, they were told to duck right off, yes, in those words, and phone calls. Texts were immediately made to other gun shops in the area. Always respected my friend and his crew's responsibility and gun ownership morals. But my jaw hit the floor on that one, and I couldn't be more in awe of the leadership and taking initiative to give other places a heads up for what was likely coming their way. Story 8. I worked at a big box store that sold rifles and shotguns. We were really encouraged to not deny any sales under any circumstances by our managers, but we also had a regional LP guy that was gung-ho for getting one of us arrested for making an illegal sale. He would do audits of all our forms regularly and would send people in to test us. Regardless, I only had one that I tried to deny for something other than a straw purchase. The background check form has several questions for the purchaser to answer. One of them asks if they have ever been convicted of a felony. This guy asks, what if I am under indictment? He was buying a hunting rifle, and so I decided that it was too sketchy for me, and I told him now. He called the manager over, and the manager finished the sale and tried to get me to sign off on the form. I refused and got written up for that one. A coworker refused an ammo sale one time. Guy came in and slapped a handgun down on the counter and asked if she had any bullets for it because he had some guys to hit. She told him they were in the back and went to call the cops. They got him at the front of the store, but he didn't have the gun. We tore the store apart looking for it. He had stashed it in the toy section in the big bin of stuffed animals. A few years after I quit, they sold a shotgun to a guy who used it on himself out in the parking lot. Story 9. I didn't work there, but I was purchasing a firearm as a gift for a friend, 100% legal, and a guy came in to pick up a stripped lower and was asking the guy about different uppers and gas systems, rails, etc. He obviously knows what he's talking about. They run the background check, and the clerk says, sorry, it's been delayed. We will call you when it goes through. The guy says, damn, it's probably because I have a common first and last name. For those who don't know, that is a common problem for a lot of people. Story 10. Obligatory. I don't work at a gun shop, but I am an outdoors guy in a small town and probably end up there poking around more than your average Joe. I have heard a few stories. When you purchase a firearm, you need to fill out a form 4473, which basically is testifying that you are not ineligible to purchase it, that it isn't a straw purchase for someone else, that you're not a substances user or abuser, etc. Then the clerk calls into a hotline and runs your information to make sure that you're not legally ineligible to purchase, have active warrants, felony convictions, all that jazz. The most common reason clerks deny a sale is issues with this. Either the information is wrong, or the person lied, or refuses to fill it out. I'll pay $100 over asking price in cash, just gimme. I live in a rural area, so usually these issues are just some space cadet 18-year-old who just got an FIDE card and wants a shotgun to go duck hunting, but can't remember his social security number. Another common reason is a suspected straw purchase. A straw purchase is when a person who can legally buy it does so specifically to transfer it to someone who can't legally have it. As you can imagine, quite against the law. Sometimes criminals will have a girlfriend with a clean criminal record who is eligible for a pistol permit. They'll come into the shop together, and the girl is not directing the transaction in any way, such as demonstrating unfamiliarity or confusion about the firearm, but not asking the clerk any questions, timid or nervous behavior, and the sketchy-looking guy next to her with fast money tattooed on his face is doing all the talking. Then when it comes time to purchase, the young lady, who clearly will not be the recipient of the weapon, is filling out all the paperwork. These are stories I've heard from my local sporting goods store, and I've seen a couple people decline the $4,473 and be asked to leave. Never seen any wild ones, though. Story 11. I had a customer with two friends want to buy some ammo. I had an odd feeling about this group. Then he told me his ID was fake. I took his word for it and denied sales to his buddies, who then tried to buy the same box of ammo. Selling to someone knowing they are going to give it to someone without a valid ID is just as bad, in the eyes of the company, as selling it to the guy without the valid ID. Story 12. Women that come in with their boyfriends and know exactly what they want, but have no interest in picking it up while the boyfriend finger ducks the gun. Guys coming in, picking out a gun, and their girlfriend, wife buy it for them. People handing someone money to buy something, asking what caliber the clip takes. It's a magazine for 99 percent of handguns out there, and it will always say what caliber the gun is somewhere in the gun, or on the freaking sales tag. Guys coming in buying the cheapest gun they can get without asking about it and knowing next to nothing about it. Someone coming in and having their friend wait outside after the guy waiting outside clearly showed him something on his phone. The copious amounts of people who smell like pot. Even if it's legal in your state, it is still illegal at a federal level and you cannot own a gun. A lot of laws pertaining to firearms are dumber than the dumbest bag of rocks around. Asking if they can turn it into a machine gun with a switch they bought online. Asking if they can buy a round or two, not a box. Story 13. I live in Oklahoma. I'm not a gun shop owner or employee, though. A buddy of mine and I went to Academy Sports and Outdoors one afternoon so he could buy a shotgun. While my buddy is filling out his paperwork, a young guy of about 19 comes in and starts looking at .22 rifles. After looking at a few and settling on one, he liked the guy, starts filling out his paperwork. As he's filling out the paperwork and talking to the attendant, the guy mentions that you won't pass if you get hit with a .22. As soon as he finished the statement, the attendant pulled the background check off the counter and tore it up right in front of the guy. The attendant then proceeded to refuse the sale and verbally reprimand the guy in front of all of us at the gun counter. The attendant told the guy about how ignorant they were and how stupid people like them. Story 14. Stank like substances. Obviously high, unable to safely shoulder a weapon, appeared completely ignorant of the most basic firearm safety. Think he might have been whacked out on pills too. Denied the first two, told the third to come back after a safety course. Had a couple straw purchase attempts overturned. Had Nix keep me on hold and sent the cops to arrest a guy mid-background check. He was AWOL. 99% of customers appeared to be knowledgeable, socially well-adjusted, and upstanding members of their community. I only sold long guns, though, and I've heard handguns attract more sketchy customers. Story 15. Not a gun store, but a gunsmith shop. We don't carry a stock of firearms, but we do transfers for people who order guns from other places. Not had anyone fail a check or raise red flags during the process of transferring a gun or with customers bringing guns in for work. I had a real prize come in one day when I was alone in the shop. We were at the end of a road and he walked up, no car. He kept asking what guns we had in stock and acting really squirrely. I'm disabled and was sitting behind my desk. Bookkeeper, paperwork manager. I repeatedly told him we didn't sell guns and asked him to leave. I started dialing the sheriff with my left hand under the edge of the desk when he got a bit close for my comfort. It was amazing how fast he backed up when a 9mm appeared in my right hand. Guy took off running, tripped over the railroad tie on the edge of the parking area 10 feet from the door, and landed on his face in a huge puddle that always forms there, as its very low spot. The sheriff's deputy, who I had seen drive by through the shop window a minute or two before, saw him come flying out of the shop on his return trip and turned into our drive before the guy extricated himself from the hole. Instant justice, though the deputy did mention that he preferred dry prisoners. Story 16. Not me, but an uncle's story. Some dude came in, asked for the cheapest gun and a single bullet, according to my uncle. The dude looked like he hadn't slept in days and was end her life with little jokes. My uncle denied the sale and gave the guy the number for the hotline. Story 17. Mostly just a lot of straw purchases. Rough-looking dudes come in with women that have that deer in the headlights type of expression, proceed to ask all the questions, end up trying to buy the cheap stuff, and are generally just very suspicious. Most of the time, denials of sale are just a gut feeling. But my store and others that I know people from almost all have management that will stand behind the employees on this sort of thing. As a whole, the industry takes it very seriously. Story 18. Not an employee. But I tried to go shooting with my grandpa once and they denied him and made us leave. They background check you before you go to the range. He had an assault with a deadly weapon charge on him from a bunch of years prior. Awkward. Story 19. Worked as a gun shop owner some time ago, and one day a suspicious-looking man walked in and said, "I need a gun that can hurt many people and do serious damage." I declined the sale and told him to get the duck out of my store. Story 20. So I do private sales in the past. We're not required to do a background check. The law says you may not sell to someone you know is ineligible. I would routinely run checks on county records for names of people. I was about to meet to sell to and would also record info on a bill of sale. One guy had a warrant for failure to appear on some traffic tickets, so I had to deny sale. Story 21. Everyone said straw purchases. I denied plenty of those. The only other I can think of was a friend's ex-boyfriend came in looking at her 15S. I had previously heard the recent gossip from my friend that he was going all out with the Occupy movement. Supposedly, he had bought body armor and now he wants to buy an R15. I wouldn't have tried to get in his way, as I think a person should be able to protest government wrongdoing. Wear body armor and own a 15S. But he has proven himself to be fairly mentally unstable in that relationship with my friend. So I opted to block his purchase. Story 22. I saw the dude crash a car into the wall next to the store, and he was jumping in the air for some reason. Before he could come in, I saw 2 stars in the upper left corner and decided to activate the door lock. Story 23. Not me, of course, but a close friend of mine has been a weapons instructor and seller for years. One time, a guy came in and they went through the whole purchase together, including most of the paperwork. At the end, when it came time to run the guy's background check, my buddy tells him it would be a few minutes for the processing or whatever. The guy then says he would be outside smoking while he waited. Ha ha ha, needless to say, that sale ended immediately. Story 24. I had someone come in and film the entire store and where the cameras were, while the other person started filling out paperwork to buy one. When we did the background check, we first called the other local stores. They had done similar things before. Canceled the purchase and kept info. The owner sent it to the FBI. Turns out they had bought more than 100 firearms recently. Not sure what their plan was. Also, had a guy come in and could barely speak congruent sentences and couldn't write clear enough to fill in the paperwork. He also checked a bunch of the yes boxes on the front page of the background check. Pretty sure he was high because he smelled of pot. We would let people take time to read and fill out the forms while we helped other customers nearby, so he had plenty of time to mess up the whole form. Story 25. Worked at a few shops. Most common reason was straw purchasing. The unfortunate part is that the person filling out the form usually didn't know it was illegal to buy a firearm for someone else. Usually a significant other that wasn't interested in the hobby lifestyle. The next most common was probably because they had loose lips and said something stupid. Had a regular who came in and was always talking about doing something illegal but trying to make it sound legal, manufacturing class firearms without the right paperwork, etc. Dude spent a good hour talking to me about this, then goes to try to purchase something. Dummy, now I have to deny you.